All right, I anticipate us getting a few more people to pop on here in a minute, and so we'll just welcome them as they join. But I want to go ahead and get us started. We have a full agenda today, and welcome everyone. I want to officially welcome you to this final May Mental Wellness Lunch and Learn session. I am Reverend Emily Miles, and I serve at Peachtree Road United Methodist as the Director of Mental Wellness. And I really am thrilled that you have chosen to invest some time in yourself and participate in this session today. These sessions have been made possible through our church's One Lamb Mental Wellness Ministry, and for those, I know many of you all are already familiar with our ministry, but for those who haven't had the chance to learn about One Lamb yet, we do a lot, but our primary focus and our mission is on normalizing and destigmatizing mental health and addiction concerns. So we open up spaces like this for conversation. We provide education, various types of support and resources, and just ways in which we can come together and connect and take steps towards healing. So this series is really just one offering out of many, many offerings that we have at One Lamb throughout the year. And so if you're interested in learning more, I'd encourage you go to onelamb.org or reach out to me. I'd love to go on a walk with you or grab coffee and share more. Before I introduce our speakers for the day, just a couple of housekeeping remarks to make this session go as smoothly as possible. First, I'd love to see your face. So if it is possible for you and safe for you, go ahead and turn your camera on. I think Zoom is just way more engaging when we can look each other in the eye. And if you wouldn't mind, please keep your microphone muted unless you're asking a question or making a comment that just makes the Zoom experience better as well. And this is a lunch and learn, so do what you need to do. If this is your lunch break and you need to eat your lunch, please feel free to do so. We are recording this session and it will be posted on the One Lamb website that you can view at a later date. This is our final session of a 4-week series that we've been doing in May, and we wanted to do this series because a lot of mental health topics, of course, are heavy, but there's also so much at our fingertips to support our well-being. And today, our conversation is centered on one of those resources for support, which is creativity in the arts. And I'm thrilled that we have two incredible therapists from Skyland Trail, Helen Goldberg and Mackenzie Williams, to talk to us about the healing power of creativity in the arts. Helen Goldberg is the Assistant Director of Adjunctive Therapies at Skyland Trail, and she has worked there for 15 years and oversees the art therapy department. In this role, she leads experiential therapeutic arts programming for adults receiving mental health treatment. Helen is also a certified soul collage facilitator, which sounds really cool, and I want to learn more about Helen, and practicing arts, where she works across a wide range of media. So she is an artist herself. She is deeply passionate about helping adults rediscover the inner and innate creativity that they have and believes that creative expression is a vital pathway to emotional well-being, resilience, and good mental health. We also have Mackenzie Williams with us, who is an art therapist at Skyland Trail, working with adults navigating mental health challenges. She guides clients in using arts as a means of exploring thoughts, emotions, and lived experiences in a supportive therapeutic setting. Her work is rooted in a strong belief that creative expression can help individuals process difficult emotions, gain clarity, and foster meaningful healing and growth. Mackenzie and Helen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules and the time with your clients to speak with us on this topic. We're so grateful for your presence and for your expertise and for the service that you do at Skyland Trail. Skyland is an incredible resource that we have here in Atlanta, and you all have been such a supportive and amazing partner to us at Peachtree Road and to the One Lamb Initiative. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Before I turn things over to you and just let you take it away, I'd love to help center us with a word of prayer. If you would all please bow your heads and pray with me. Most gracious and loving God, you are so good and so worthy of our praise. God, we thank you for your presence with us, for your Holy Spirit, which dwells within us, and for your light that shines all around us. God, we thank you for our community and for our community of faith, for the resources we have in our city, and for this opportunity we have to learn, grow, and draw closer to you. I ask that you bless the time that we are about to share. Open our hearts, our ears, and our minds as we learn about the arts and the healing power it has on us. Please bless and be with our speakers, Helen and Mackenzie. Give them peace and clarity of thought and confidence in the words and wisdom they have to share with us. And may all the words that we speak, the thoughts that we hold, and the stirrings within our own souls be pleasing in your sight. And we make this prayer in the name of Jesus, your Son. Amen. I'll hand things over to you, Helen and Kenzie.
All right, thank you. So, hello everyone, and thank you so much for being with us here today. We're really grateful to Reverend Emily and to the Peachtree Road United Methodist Church Mental Health Initiative for inviting us to be part of this conversation. Today, we'll be exploring the relationship between creativity, emotional well-being, and mental health, looking both at some of the research behind creative expression, as well as practical and accessible ways creativity can support us in our everyday lives. One of the things we hope this webinar does is encourage people to think a little differently about creativity. Many adults have learned to think of creativity as something reserved only for artists or particularly talented people. But creativity is actually a deeply human capacity that can show up in many different forms throughout our lives. And as we move through today's presentation, we hope that you all will leave with a deeper understanding of how creativity can support emotional well-being, stress reduction, self-expression, and connection. We'll also explore current research around creativity and mental health while offering practical examples and simple ways that people can begin to incorporate more creativity into everyday life, regardless of any artistic skill or experience. So before we begin, I'd like to briefly review today's objectives. Um, so we'll look at how creativity supports our mental and emotional well-being, what current research tells us about creativity and the brain, and how creative practices can help us with things like stress reduction, emotional regulation, connection, and resilience. We also really hope that you all leave here today with a broader and more compassionate understanding of creativity, one that feels accessible and relevant to your everyday life, not just artistic skill or talent. And throughout the webinar, we'll offer practical examples and simple ways that creativity can be incorporated into your daily routines and self-care practices. And so, with that, we'll begin by starting with a very foundational question. So, next slide. What is creativity? So, when many people hear the word creativity, they often immediately think of artistic talent or being naturally gifted. People often think that creativity belongs to the painters, the musicians, the writers, or people who identify as artists. But in reality, creativity is much, much broader than that. Creativity is a deeply, deeply human capacity. It's how we express ourselves, it's how we solve problems, it's how we adapt to change, imagine possibilities in our lives, how we connect with others, and how we make meaning from all of our experiences. Creativity can certainly include painting, music, and writing, but it can also look like cooking and gardening and storytelling, decorating our home, photography, movement, parenting, building our community, or finding new ways to navigate challenges in our daily life. In many ways, creativity is connected to how we engage with life itself. And one of the things that we often see in mental health settings is that many adults have become disconnected from creativity, often because they've learned to associate it with performance or talent rather than expression and experience. Children naturally create without needing any permission. They play, imagine, experiment, and make things because creativity in itself is instinctive and exploratory. But as adults, many of us become more self conscious. We begin to ask questions like, am I good at this? What if it looks bad? What's the point if I'm not talented? And over time, creativity can start to feel intimidating rather than natural. And so, one of the most important things we hope that you all take away today is that creativity is not just reserved for the artist, that it belongs to all of us. And often, creativity is less about producing something impressive, and it's more about just engaging with our curiosity, with our sense of expression, our playfulness, our reflection, and just being present. Next slide, please.
Right. And so something, that we wanted to talk about was what creativity can look like across the lifespan. And our creativity is experienced and developed, throughout our lives over our emotional, cognitive, and social development. And in childhood, what we know is that children primarily experience the world through their senses. And it's grounded in what they see, hear, touch, taste, smell, the boundaries they push on, and then it eventually evolves through pretend play, storytelling, and experimentation. And that is how children make sense of themselves and the world around them. And during this stage when creativity is encouraged and prioritized, it often supports confidence, emotional expression, and healthy development. And then typically we see as we move into adolescence, creativity can sometimes diminish. That light can sometimes dim, and that's normally attributed to a lot of things. But as we become more aware of our peers, many young people start to feel more self-conscious about their playfulness and experimentation. And the stage is heavily focused on identity development, and creativity often feels more vulnerable. It's more personalized to us, and it can feel like more exposed than when we're, children. And so having space to explore creativity during adolescence can be really important. Creative expression helps adolescents develop a stronger sense of self and build confidence in their individuality. And then we see as we move into adulthood, creativity often shifts towards more problem solving, and daily functioning. We rely on our creativity to adapt, manage our responsibilities, navigate challenges in our work life, in our relationships, and just our everyday life. And creativity can also become an important form of stress relief in our adulthood. Many adults seek out creative activities to release tension, reconnect with themselves, and experience joy, mastery, and relaxation. And then in older adulthood, creativity shifts to become more about connection and storytelling. People often revisit creative skills that they developed earlier in their life and use their new life experiences to inform other forms of self-expression. And people often view this time as an opportunity to master areas of interest. And it also plays an important role in cognition and memory. And many of us have maybe seen examples of people with dementia or Alzheimer's experience moments of clarity through music, art, or storytelling. And even for those without cognitive decline, creativity can support our memory, our meaning making, and just emotional connection. Next slide. And so something else we wanted to talk about was the connection between creativity and mental health. And Helen and I sort of see the work and the impact that creativity has with the individuals we work with at Skyline Trail daily. And a lot of those things that we see are reflected in the research. And with individuals that we work with, we see like an increase in mindfulness. We see people reconnect with things that brought them joy. And during their time with us, it can usually be very challenging. They're usually finding things out about themselves, and they're doing really hard work here at Skyline Trail. And so it often helps them build resilience to have moments to create and experience joy, mastery, and connection alongside those challenging moments they have here with us. And then in group therapy, we see individuals connecting and sharing in community. They become aware of their peers, like the challenges that other people face, and the depth of those other experiences. And it often can feel very overwhelming to share vulnerably in therapy groups. And then there's also an additional layer in the art therapy groups that we lead here of vulnerability when you think of maybe showing the thing that you made. And so again, we're seeing people building strength and resilience through creativity and allowing themselves to be vulnerable and going through those challenges. It helps them build a lot of confidence and strength. Next slide.
So, one of the reasons creativity can feel calming or restorative is because it can impact the body's stress response. Cortisol is one of the body's primary stress hormones. Now, stress itself is not inherently bad. Our bodies are actually designed to respond to challenge and danger. But many people today experience chronic stress. And this is where the nervous system remains activated for longer periods of time without enough opportunity to rest and regulate. And over time, chronic stress can affect mood, concentration, it can affect our sleep, our physical health, and just our general emotional well being. Now, research increasingly shows that engaging in creative activities may help reduce stress and support emotional regulation. So, there's one study from Drexel University found that after just 45 minutes of art making, the majority of participants showed reduced cortisol levels, regardless of whether they considered themselves artistic or experienced. And I think that that is such an important point because the benefits were not dependent on talent or skill. What was important and what matters is the experience of engaging in the creative. So, activities like drawing, journaling, working with clay, knitting, gardening, collage, music, many other forms of creative engagement can help shift our attention away from constantly thinking and into our sensory experience and our present moment awareness. Creativity often naturally invites us to slow down, to focus, to notice, and to engage with our senses. And many creative activities also involve repetitive movement, rhythm, touch, color, texture, or bilateral engagement, all of which can be regulating for the nervous system. And in mental health settings, and often here at Skyland, we often see that creativity can provide people with a nonverbal outlet for their emotions, for stress, and self expression when words alone may not feel sufficient. So, creativity gives both the body and the mind an opportunity to settle, to reconnect, and to experience moments of relief, focus, and presence. Next slide, please. So, one of the reasons creativity can feel so restorative is because it can help us enter what psychologists call a flow state. A flow state is a period of deep focus and absorption where we become fully engaged in an activity. And during these moments, people often describe losing track of time, feeling less self conscious, and becoming completely immersed in what they're doing. And many people, probably many of you, have experienced flow without realizing that there's actually a name for it. You may have experienced it while you're gardening, cooking, knitting, journaling, if you're organizing that cluttered room, baking, woodworking, even going out for a walk in nature, listening to music, or doing anything, working with our hands. It's that feeling where your attention becomes fully engaged and the outside world just quietens down for a little while. And for many people, flow feels calming, grounding, and mentally quieting. There can be a sense of focus, rhythm, feeling this immersion and presence, and sometimes even relief. And in a world where many of us are constantly multitasking, overstimulated, scrolling on the phone, constantly consuming information or thinking about what's next, experiences of flow can become incredibly important for our emotional well being. So, research suggests that flow states may reduce rumination and self referential thinking, meaning we temporarily step outside of that space of constant self evaluation and that mental noise. And importantly, flow is not limited to, again, not limited to highly artistic or highly skilled activities. Flow often happens when there is a balance between challenge and accessibility, when something is engaging enough to hold our attention, but not so overwhelming that it creates anxiety. So, this is also why repetitive or sensory activities can feel regulating for many people. So, if there's any of you out there who like to knit or crochet or activities like that, where we're kind of doing the same thing repetitively, and very easily we can slip into that kind of flow state. The goal always is not about perfection. The goal is always about being present. It's being in the present moment. And often the value comes simply from having the experience or being fully immersed in the process itself. Next slide, please.
Okay, so gonna touch on a little bit emotional regulation. And if you're not familiar with this term, it's often kind of attributed to dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, but it's just a way for people to, I guess, when you're feeling dysregulated, like maybe anxious or maybe there's something overwhelming happening in your life. There are a lot of strategies to kind of regulate, to come back to center or to feel more grounded. And creativity and engaging in creative activities can help us regulate. And a couple of those ways, and through the research, how people reflect on, what they felt after doing something creative, were a couple of things. And the first one I wanted to touch on is distraction and escapism. And I think when we hear those words, it sounds negative. Like I shouldn't want to escape from the things that are happening in my life. And the important part, or using that as a skill to regulate, is sometimes I need to like take a step back from the thing that's overwhelming me, so that I can re-engage with it later in a more meaningful way. And so it sounds bad, but it does actually help to distract a little bit from the things that overwhelm you. And so one way creativity does that is it sometimes conjures up pleasant imagery. Oftentimes I ask my clients to draw a safe place, a place they feel totally comfortable and supported. And so that helps them conjure up pleasant imagery. It also helps them redirect their attention from unwanted thoughts and feelings. And then it helps them also, like I was saying, disengage from the things that are bothering them. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is acceptance, and kind of reflection. Creativity can help people like process emotions, gain perspective, and reflect on their experiences with greater clarity. Um, and people often reflect that it helps them come to terms with their emotions. It helps them put their worries or problems into perspective, and like I said, just a clearer mind. And then the other thing is an enhanced self-identity. Creativity can help people feel more capable of tackling challenges and problem solving, and they often feel like reassured of their own abilities. And it's often kind of like zooming out. If I can tackle this one thing, if I can engage in something that I feel is in my wheelhouse and I know what I'm doing, then I can take that feeling and put it towards also my larger life. Next slide, please. And then I also want to talk about a little bit of sensory engagement. We've been mentioning this throughout the presentation so far. It's one of the things that we really think about when it comes to art or creativity, is engaging with our senses. And like I said before, sensory processing is one of the earliest ways that we learn. And it's the way we like first start experiencing the world around us. And we eventually, from infant to like a toddler, infants are more passive, right? They're kind of just observing the world around them, and then toddlers are being more active, like I said, getting into stuff they shouldn't be and all the above, but they're active, they're experiencing their world very actively. And then, research kind of suggests that nonverbal expressive art therapy can help adults access their childhood experiences. And that is through that sensory connection. When we, as adults, engage with our senses, we can reconnect with those first ways we were experiencing the world. And that is just anything that we can touch, taste, see, hear, smell. It brings us back and it helps us process and access those experiences. Um, excuse me. And then experiencing creativity through the senses can also quiet the mind. We've been talking about this mindfulness. It helps us strengthen the connection between our mind and body. When we're using our hands to really experience, art or creativity, it connects our mind and body on a deeper level. and experiencing things like texture, movement, color, sound, rhythm. We often think of rhythm as more connected to music, but you can also kind of engage. I see people kind of engaging with rhythm when they're creating, like the way they move their utensil and the sound that it makes, or even just the flow of how they're moving with the paper or whatever they're making. And that also helps people can reconnect with themselves and become more aware of their internal states. And then something that I've also mentioned before is that those sensory-based creative interventions also kind of have shown benefits for individuals with Alzheimer's, and they support kind of memory recall and cognitive functioning. Like I said, regaining that moment of clarity. Next slide.
So many adults approach creativity with the belief that the end result needs to be good, or impressive, productive, or successful in order for the activity itself to have value. And we live in a culture, unfortunately, that reinforces this mindset constantly. We are often taught to prioritize achievement and performance, efficiency, productivity, outcomes. And so naturally, many adults begin to approach creativity with this pressure and self judgment rather than the curiosity and exploration that maybe we had when we were younger, as Kenzie was mentioning. But in many therapeutic and wellness oriented practices, the benefits often come from the process itself. And I feel like a lot of what Kenzie and I do here at Skyland Trail is kind of try to reframe that for many of the adults that we work with, because many of them are in that the mindset that's focused on the end product. And so we try to get them into this space of experimenting and sensing and reflecting and being present and engaging. Because when we focus only on the product, the end result, creativity can very quickly become connected to perfectionism, where we have comparison, we're scared of failing, we have fear of judgment. And so oftentimes people stop before they even begin because they immediately assume the result won't be good enough. So, why even bother trying? But when we shift our attention towards the process, the actual act of creating, creativity can become more accessible. It can be calming, playful, restorative, all of the things that we're talking about. But at the same time, I also want to acknowledge that the product and the development of skill can absolutely matter too. In many of the groups that I lead at Skyland Trail, I intentionally try to create opportunities for both therapeutic engagement and skill building at the same time. There's huge, tremendous value in learning a new creative skill and developing that mastery over time. And I think that that can be challenging for many adults. I think as adults, people think they should just know how to do stuff immediately because they're now an adult. And I think it's often hard for us to, as adults, to learn something new because we have to be willing to be a beginner again. And when we begin anything, when we learn anything for the first time, there's a learning curve. Excuse me, there's a learning curve. But over time, as people build competence and confidence, I and others who teach often see increases in self-esteem, in motivation, in pride, in resilience, better able to tolerate frustration, and just a sense of identity. So creating something tangible can also foster a sense of accomplishment and empowerment. And so this is not about dismissing skill or artistry, but it's about expanding the definition of value. So both the process and the product are equally important. However, emotional well being, self expression, and our nervous system regulation do not depend on creating something perfect or something good or whatever that definition is that can sometimes often block us. And one of the things that I always love to say to the people that I work with is one of the reasons I love art so much is that it's subjective, that there is no good art, there is no bad art, there's just art. And art is just self-expression. It's just somebody expressing themselves. And if you've ever been to a museum, particularly like a modern art museum, you'll sometimes see people like looking at something that they don't understand and be like, well, I don't, it's just a dot on this canvas. I don't, like anyone could do that. And probably they could. And people will look at art and some people will love it. And the same person will look at that same piece of art and will hate it. And that's why it's great. There's no value judgment on what we create. And I think oftentimes people get stuck because the value judgment comes from our own selves. It comes from inside of us because nobody else really cares. And I think it's just a hard leap for us to get there sometimes. But I think, if we keep showing up and we keep kind of challenging that, my experience is that the healing happens in the doing, in the process. And the confidence grows through building mastery and skill over time. And both can exist together. Next slide, please. So I think this is my favorite slide. It's something that I bump up against often because as we've spoken, children tend to create naturally and freely. If you think back to when you were a child yourself, we never stopped to ask whether our drawing was good enough before we began to draw. We would just dive into the crayons or whatever the medium was, exploring and playing with paint. Children create because they're curious, because creativity is instinctive. But unfortunately, as we grow older, creativity often becomes tied to performance, comparison, productivity, or skill. And so many adults internalize this belief that creativity belongs only to talented or artistic people. And over time, people begin accumulating experiences that further disconnect them from their innate creativity. Sometimes it can come from, a harsh criticism, um, an embarrassment, sometimes from themselves comparing, from comparison, sometimes from perfectionism, sometimes being told that creativity is impractical or it's not important. But for many adults, creativity slowly gets replaced as we get older. It gets replaced by responsibility, by productivity, perhaps caregiving, work, stress, survival, and exhaustion. We just don't have time. We don't make the time. Um, so people don't stop creating most of the time, not because they lack creativity, it's because they no longer feel that they have permission, or they have the time, or the energy, or the confidence, or the safety to engage with it. And perfectionism plays a huge role. Many adults feel intense pressure to be immediately good at something. And if they're not naturally skilled, they assume that they have failed. But creativity was never meant to exist only in the service of achievement. Creativity can be playful, messy, experimental, comforting, reflective, and just enjoyable. And I think many adults are deeply hungry for spaces where they can engage creatively, sorry, without being evaluated. In many of the groups that Kenzie and I both lead, um, I try to stay away from really skilled technical things to avoid that, and so that the clients we work with are engaging with art that is much more accessible, where they can be playful and have a sense of accomplishment pretty quickly, and kind of reframe that internal dialogue about their creativity. Um, People begin reconnecting, and when they do begin connecting, it's with curiosity, with confidence and imagination, and they start to find that part of themselves that has perhaps been neglected for a long time. Because again, I want to say this: creativity is not something that we lose; it's a part of all of us. It's often something that people stop making space for. Next slide, please. Kenzie, you're muted, hon.
Thank you. So we've been mentioning this, the barriers to creativity throughout our presentation today. So I'm gonna kind of go over this quickly, but a lot of the barriers that we face are rooted in anxiety and a resistance to vulnerability. So things like perfectionism. Typically, we learned early in life that achievement leads to praise, acceptance, validation, and that kind of makes creative risk taking feel unsafe. It often feels too vulnerable. So that leads to over editing, procrastination, and um, just avoiding creative activities altogether. And then we have an inner critic. And though our inner critic often also develops out of a need to protect ourselves from shame or also vulnerability. And this usually leads to people thinking that they are not capable, that they're not good enough. It's easier to not try than to fail. And often I try and help the people that I work with shift their inner critic to a more constructive critic. And I often try to shift it more to motivating growth. And so rather than being more fear-based, it becomes more values-based. How can I act or how can I create in alignment with my values? And it helps shift that internal dialogue to more curiosity and compassion and acceptance. And then comparison. We often compare our final product to others, and that often diminishes our creativity. And measuring ourselves against other people can often disconnect us from our own experience and our own intrinsic motivation. And so I often try to also shift that urge to compare to having the people I work with kind of ask the question, like, if you like someone else's thing that they made, that's okay. Like you can like it, you can enjoy it, but lead with curiosity, like, oh, how did you do that, and how can I replicate that? And believe that you are capable of those things because you are. If they were, then you are too. And so all those things come through expectation or sorry, acceptance and then lowering your expectations, which often sounds very bad when I say that. But if I say to myself, like, I'm allowed to make something that I don't like, or I'm allowed to make something bad, that kind of frees myself up to experiment, to enjoy the moment. If I'm not thinking that it has to be good immediately, then I'm free. I've allowed myself to be free. And then I often also say that criticism, that inner critic that we have, it has a place in your life, but it doesn't have to limit you. We often use our inner critic as a way to stop us from engaging in life the way we want to. And like I said, I try to encourage people to use it as a force for growth and experimentation, to try something new. Next slide, please. And then the last thing we want to touch on is everyday creativity. That's also a big part of today's webinar, is to kind of broaden the definition of what creativity looks like. And it can be really difficult to make space for creativity, especially when we define it very narrowly, when we think it means art or music or anything that we maybe think of when I'm saying creativity. But when we broaden it, it becomes more applicable to our daily life when we're making decisions. Like I'm moving soon, so I'm thinking about how I'm going to put my life. I'm going to pack my life up and move it somewhere else, and how I'm going to do that. And that takes a lot of creativity and a lot of thought and energy and effort. And that's a way I'm being creative in my daily life right now. But other ways are things like cooking and baking, things that we've mentioned, Helen was mentioning earlier, but things like photography, like even using your phone camera to take a photo of the sunset on your drive home. But it does not, the thing I wanted to touch on with that specifically is you don't have to have an expensive camera. You don't have to have the best pencils or the best baking utensils. You don't have to set a barrier for yourself. It can just be that easy. You can just take out your phone and take a picture, and that can just be considered photography. And things like gardening and flower arranging, organizing your space or designing your space, maybe decorating, maybe you enjoy decorating. That's a great way to be creative in your daily life. And then things like writing and storytelling, even just verbalizing a story, like telling, people you care about a story about your life is very creative. You can be very creative when you tell a story. And then it's about problem solving. It's about emotional expression and perspective taking. And all of those things support, cognition, mindfulness, and emotional well-being. And it doesn't have to, like I said, it doesn't have to look like traditional art to be meaningful. It's simply the act of engaging with the world in a thoughtful, expressive, and curious way that brings about those feelings of creativity, flow state, all of those things that we were mentioning throughout our presentation today. Next slide.
Hey, so as we come towards the end of the webinar today, Kenzie and I were thinking, like, what could we possibly do for something that you could interact with experientially during this time? And one of my favorite things, and something that I do personally as a creative practice, is something called a stream of conscious free write. It's a really big mouthful. It has other lovely names like brain dump and things like that. But it's a space where it's boundaried, so you can set a boundary with time or with the amount of pages that you write. But we limit it in some way because it can be often not helpful for us to just kind of keep writing and going on and on. That can kind of lead us into rumination. But we have it nice and boundaried. And I often start with a gratitude practice. So I write down something that I'm grateful for. And I also remind the people I work with that there's no value judgment on gratitude either. So we can write that we're grateful for the same thing each and every time. But starting with a gratitude, ending with a gratitude, or maybe you have an affirmation, or maybe there's a piece of scripture that you want to write down, whatever resonates with you, whatever feels right for you. The only rule with this piece of writing is to keep the pen moving across the page consistently. And so hopefully while I am talking, you're reaching for a pen or a pencil or something that you can write with, and perhaps a piece of paper. I think what can often trip us up as well is the pen and the piece of paper. I know for myself, like having, a beautiful journal, I felt like my handwriting needed to be beautiful, the content needed to be beautiful, and so therefore I just didn't write in these journals. And what broke me of that was, I think $1.99 composition book. Immediately it gave me permission to kind of scribble and tear pages out. And now I'm able to write in all of my beautiful journals. So, but literally just a scrap of paper, a pencil, anything you like. If you choose not to participate, that's fine also. But perhaps maybe think about doing it at another time outside of this webinar. And our prompt for the day is, where does creativity already exist in my life, even in small or ordinary ways? And so, again, you may think about many of the things that Kenzie and I have mentioned today as we've tried to reframe or kind of redirect or broaden perhaps our lens that we look through of what we think encompasses creativity. And so you might be thinking about like the cooking or the gardening or the decorating or the problem solving or the caregiving. So any of these small moments that bring a sense of being present, a sense of comfort, or just a sense of your creative self expression. And so when we do this writing, again, I'm going to time you. We're just going to do this for a quick 3 minutes. This isn't anything that we're going to ask you to share or provide feedback on. So what you write is between you and the page. And often what I have experienced in the past is that the block for some people about writing can be perhaps you had some, I fondly call it diary trauma, where maybe in your younger years you wrote down something and maybe somebody read it, and now you feel like it's not safe for you to perhaps write down your vulnerabilities, your innermost thoughts and feelings. And so there's a couple of workarounds that I give the people I work with. And one is just scribble. You can just scribble. Your handwriting doesn't need to be legible. Um, we can write over the same sentence over and over and over again, and we end up with a big black inky mark, which isn't legible. And you can also just tear that page out and tear it up into tiny little pieces and throw it away. So those are many things that you can do. So hopefully during my rambling, you've all had time to reach for a pen and a piece of paper. And I'm just going to assume that those who are wanting to engage are ready. So if everybody is ready, if you just write continuously, I will tell you when to stop. And the prompt is, where does creativity already exist in my life, even in small or ordinary ways? So please begin. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop us right there. Um, I want to allow at least a few minutes for a couple of questions, hopefully. I know that we haven't allowed a whole lot of time, but I know that Kenzie and I have the time available if there's questions. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions or reflections, you're welcome to unmute. I'll put those questions in the chat. And perhaps while you're thinking of some questions, I just want to encourage you to try and do the writing exercise that you just did. Again, outside of this webinar, you can start with a simple composition book. And again, keep it boundaried. I typically write for 3 pages, front, back, and then another page, and that's my boundary. I don't like to do a timer because it distracts me from the writing. And sometimes I will go for days without doing it. I think not having too many rules around when you do it or what it looks like can be really help break down the barrier to actually doing it and engaging. We gave you a prompt today, but oftentimes I will do this exercise without a prompt and will just let my thoughts flow freely. And it's really a good way to kind of just assess, where you are. It gives us the opportunity to reflect and to process our thoughts and our feelings. I think oftentimes we're always thinking about what's next and driving forward. So again, if there's any questions, let us know. But we're really grateful and thankful that those of you who were able to make the time to attend today and to listen to our webinar. This is something that Kenzie and I feel super passionate about, and we're really thankful that we were able to share just a small part of what we do and the impact it can have on us and our mental health and well-being. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen and Kenzie, for your presentation. It's really encouraging to me to see the freedom that there is in the types of creativity that there are. I had one question my question was about physical activity and creativity, and if you all do anything at Skyland or just, from your own experience, practices where you're moving your body beyond just dance. Like, I'm a yoga person, and I think that's one of my avenues of creativity, but I didn't see that up there as one of the buckets or examples, and I just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's absolutely a form of creativity. We do a lot of physical movement here at Skyland Trail. It's also a big part of our what we call adjunctive therapies, which art therapy falls under. But yeah, we do yoga. We do something called Healthy Challenge, which is like weightlifting and strength training. And yeah, it's a big part of creativity. Just moving alone can really help you access that flow state for sure. Helen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, just even going for a walk.
Hmm.
Uh, I know myself, like just being out in nature, being immersed in nature and walking in nature, I can quickly access that space of flow, and it's definitely where I feel connected. I feel very connected when I'm in nature. But yeah, just like Kenzie said, we are part of this big umbrella called adjunctive therapies, and under that umbrella, we have horticulture therapy and music therapy, and then there's a big nutrition component and exercise. So it's very much a holistic approach to our mental health and well-being.
Mm.
Linda, I see you have a hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It was a great presentation. I knew that your presentation today was going to be on creativity, and yesterday something popped up on my Instagram feed that I thought you'd be interested in. Um, it's Sue Monk Kidd, who's an author, local author, and she has Parkinson's, and she's had Parkinson's for 7 years. Anyway, she posted a video of herself dancing, and when she does that, she doesn't have tremors.
Mm.
And also, I was going to show you this picture. She drew a picture of her brain on art. So if you can see it, that's how she said the impact of art, painting and dancing on her Parkinson's symptoms. And she said when she does that, nearly everything fades and disappears. So I thought that was
Mhm.
pretty demonstrative of the effects of art and dancing on your brain.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Linda. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm familiar with stories as well when people sing, um,
Oh,
the tremors disappear as well, or people with stutters and things like that. So I definitely think that um, we tap into a healing space with creativity as well. I think the important thing, and a takeaway is, we talk about having balance in life, and I think we can quickly become focused in certain areas, and other things kind of fall away or don't get as much care or as much attention. And certainly at Skyland, again, with our holistic approach, we try to look at all of these different pillars of health, and art and creativity is just one pillar. It's an important pillar, it's a very foundational pillar, but there's all of these other things too. And I think it's important to make sure that we're kind of, adding to all of these different buckets that kind of just support us as humans as we walk through this life.
Well, I'm mindful of our time, and I just want to say thank you again. Thank you to Skyland Trail, and thank you, Helen and Kenzie, specifically for your time. Thank you, Molly, for helping us coordinate and get this set up. And thanks, everyone, for participating. I really have loved your engagement and your questions, and it's encouraged me to just see you investing in yourself through these sessions. So please reach out if there's anything I can do for you. Again, this recording will be made live on the One Lamb website. And everyone, take care and be well. I'll see you soon.